Hello YouTube. Of all characters in Oblivion, nobody can argue that Martin Septim is one of the most memorable, and it can even be said that he and not the player is kinda the main character of the game. Now, today I want to talk to you about some of his hidden and in some cases quite dark aspects of his backstory, while also going over his youth and his upbringing. So, without any further ado, let's roll the intro and talk about Martin Septim. Over the course of his reign, Emperor Uriel Septim VII established himself mostly as a well-liked and fair ruler to the people of Tamriel. However, his reign was not without incidents, as several urgent crises happened during his reign, such as the Imperial Simulacrum, the period of time of the Elder Scrolls I arena in which the Emperor himself was captured and kidnapped by Jaegar Tharn. You also had the events of the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall leading to the Warp in the West, and the Dagoth crisis in Morrowind taking place during the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Now, all these crises were terrible for the people of Tamriel in their own right, but by far the most destructive and biggest crisis developed in the last few days of Uriel Septim VII's life, as on the 27th of the last seed of the year 433 of the Third Era, the Emperor was told that all of his children were assassinated, all his heirs were dead, and someone was hunting down the Imperial line. To such a degree even that the Emperor's eldest son, Prince Geldal Septim, was killed by his newlywed wife, who turned out to be part of the cult hunting down the Septim line. Now, the organization responsible for this tragedy was of course the Mythic Dawn, Mehrunes Dagon worshippers whose aim it was to have no more Imperial heirs of the Dragonborn Septim line left on Tamriel, so that none may light the dragon fires which protect the world against invasions by the Daedra, leaving the door open for their lord, Mehrunes Dagon, to conquer the mortal world and turn it into chaos. Now, of course, when Emperor Uriel Septim VII and his bodyguards, the Blades, heard the news of these assassinations, the Blades tried evacuating him from the Imperial city to save him from assassination. But as anyone who played Oblivion's opening knows, they failed, as the Mythic Dawn managed to ambush the Emperor and his protectors, leading to the Emperor's ultimate death in presence of the player. But fortunately for all of Tamriel, Uriel Septim VII had a big secret. He had a bastard son hidden away. A bastard son born out of an affair between Emperor Uriel Septim VII and a girl that we only know of as Gemil, who seemed to be some kind of palace worker according to unreliable documents, as she would ultimately deliver the baby at the palace. This affair, however, was the result of Emperor Uriel Septim VII's unhappy marriage to Empress Kala Voria, which made him miserable and caused for a lot of infighting in the Imperial family and likely did not give his other legitimate children a very happy childhood. But despite how miserable the marriage made Emperor Uriel, I think that in the end everyone on Tamriel should be kinda glad that it happened, as that is what led to the affair that gave them Martin Septim, the last of the Imperial line who would ultimately save all of Tamriel. Now, like I said before, Martin was born seemingly within the Imperial Palace, with Emperor Uriel seemingly present at his birth, and it's been suggested that it was him who also gave his bastard son the name Martin, although it's a bit unclear, as some have suggested that his later foster parents might have given him the name, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. On the night of his birth, the then captain of the Blades, who formed the palace guard and close friend of Emperor Uriel, Joffrey, was called into the Emperor's private chambers. That night, Emperor Uriel handed him a basket with the sleeping child Martin. He did not say whose child it was, but Joffrey, who already knew that it must be the Emperor's son, was told to find a safe place for the child to grow up. Joffrey then took the baby and disappeared with him into the night, and Joffrey traveled long until he found a place where he deemed the child could grow up in peace and in prosperity, with a widowed farmer near Kvatch. Joffrey then put the basket and the child on the farmer's doorstep and left Martin's fate in the farmer's hands. There, Martin grew up without knowing anything of his true parentage. He believed for years that his mother, just like his father, had been a simple farmer and had died during childbirth. He had no contact with his actual parents as far as we know, as while the Emperor would ask his friend, now Grand Master of the Blades Joffrey, to keep an eye on the boy and keep him posted on how he was doing in life, there was no actual spoken contact from what we know between Martin and his father. And it also seems that Martin apparently did not know his true mother, not in any way. In fact, we know very little about her, although there is a suggestion that she may have been killed on Uriel's orders around 16 or so years after Martin's birth, suggesting that the affair with his mother might have ended badly, or perhaps he threatened to reveal Martin's existence or something like that. Truth is, we don't know. At the farm where Martin grew up, he grew up healthy and strong, and it was likely around puberty that it became clear that he also had quite some magical talent, as he was invited to come and study at the local Mages Guild in Kvatch. However, there his life would end up taking a bit of a darker turn, as at the Mages Guild he made friends with several other mage apprentices. All of them were ambitious, including Martin, and over time they all became obsessed with ever stronger types of magic, and they became frustrated with all the rules and restrictions of the Mages Guild. Martin and his friends hungered for more, they wanted more, and that led them to walk an alternative and darker path as Martin and his friends joined the Daedric cult. Now, they didn't join a particularly bad one or anything, in fact they ended up joining probably the most fun one, the cult of the Daedric Prince Sanguine, Daedric Prince of drunkenness, partying and debauchery, whose worship is conducted in fun but not very YouTube friendly ways. Just imagine the word bunga twice and add a lot of alcohol to that. Alright, now eventually Martin became quite a prominent follower of Sanguine, even being something of a chosen, as it's said that for a time Martin even held the Rose of Sanguine, the Daedric Prince Sanguine's most well-known Daedric artifact, which Martin apparently used to amass more power for himself. Now, something else about his time in the cult, which is pretty interesting but is just a theory that some of the people in my comments on my video on Uriel Septim VII's legitimate children pointed out, is that Martin, while in the cult of the Daedric Prince Sanguine, almost certainly had lovers, which means that he might have some bastards of his own out there, which is a complete theory, but I like the theory. Some people have even suggested that if that theory is true, the last Dragonborn may descend from Martin. I'm not sure about that, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless to think that Martin may have his own bastard children, but we don't know about that. It's just an interesting theory that I thought to share. However, what we do know about his time in the cult is that at one point everything apparently went wrong. Martin describes that at some point his friends died in some tragic accident related to the cult, and from that point on he was ridden with guilt and shame and turned his back on the Daedric Prince and Daedric worship altogether. It is here at this point in time that Martin sought atonement for his sins, entering the priesthood in the great cathedral of Akatosh in Kvatch, working for many years as a priest of the Eight, hoping to atone for his past sins, becoming a selfless man who shunned power rather than seeking it. It's here at the cathedral, several years into his service as a priest, now going by the name Brother Martin, that his life would be completely turned upside down. You see, the Mythic Dawn, while they assassinated his father, brothers and presumably others in his family to instigate the Oblivion Crisis, did not know of him, but it's always been speculated that the Daedric Prince Mehrunes Dagon did know of him, or at least felt his presence in Kvatch, as one who could light the dragon fires. Or perhaps the Mythic Dawn did somehow find out about his existence without knowing specifically who he was, because for some reason, likely because of Martin's presence, Kvatch was chosen as the big starting shot of the Oblivion Crisis. As far as we know, Kvatch was the first mortal city to be laid to waste in that crisis. During the attack on Kvatch, just before we meet Martin, we find out that he did not flee the city, but barricaded himself inside the chapel of Akatosh instead, helping to save the lives of those left in the city and the soldiers still trying to defend it. It is here in the chapel where we can meet him in the game, help him find out his true identity, after which we can take him to the Blades, where they will protect him, while Martin and the player work together to end the Oblivion Crisis over the course of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. To the player, he plays a bit of a supporting role throughout the story, helping the player unravel Daedric mysteries, using the knowledge and powers that he attained in his days in the Daedric cult, which allows him to handle Daedric artifacts better than others, which leads to him helping the player decipher the Daedric artifact of Mehrunes Dagon, the Mysterium Xarxes, in an effort to end the Oblivion Crisis together with the player. Ultimately, Martin would be Emperor for about a day, as at the climax of the story he is brought to the Imperial city as the Elder Council accepted his claim as new Emperor. But as those who played Oblivion know, before he could officially be crowned, Mehrunes Dagon put all his forces, including an avatar of himself, to work to wipe the Imperial city off the map and kill Martin before the dragon fires could be lit and he could be banished back. When they arrive at the city and see the avatar of Mehrunes Dagon, Martin knows that it's too late to relight the dragon fires, as it would no longer help beat Mehrunes Dagon back completely. So in an ultimate attempt to save the mortal world from the claws of Dagon, Martin uses his Dragonborn soul in synergy with the Amulet of Kings to shatter it and unleash its power by transforming into an avatar of the god Akatosh, a massive golden fire dragon that can beat Dagon back to oblivion. But that heroic deed also ended his life, and Martin sacrificed himself in the end for all of Tamriel, ending the Oblivion Crisis, and to many he would go down in history as the Septim Emperor with the shortest reign, but perhaps the greatest of them all. By many he would be considered a hero of mankind on the level of Tiber Septim himself, and he cemented his place in history as an emperor who one would remember for centuries to come. Like I said before in the intro, in a way you and Martin are both main characters, and if you had to pick a chosen one in this story, and I'm defining chosen one as someone who will save the world from an all-great evil, like the last Dragonborn in Skyrim or the Nerevarine in Morrowind, then that chosen one would likely be Martin and not the player. You essentially help the main character reach his destiny, which I personally always really loved as a dynamic in the game, and which makes Oblivion's story my favorite story in the series. Anyway, that's about all I can say about Martin Septim and his backstory, and I sincerely hope that I managed to teach you something new today about this fan favorite character. And if I did, then consider liking the video, as that's how YouTube determines which content is worthy and which is not for their algorithm. Anyway, all that's left for me to be done is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Doji, Hunter Joe, KLegendM, King Chris 20, RB Dash, Volkior of Argonia, Devin Mattingly, Rakai and Sordo Bushido. These people, along with all the others on screen, keep my channel afloat, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I will see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video, probably next week.